Welcome back to John's Comic Corner. Today, it has been long in the making. I read the first issue of every New 52 comic. For those who don't know, in 2011, DC Comics decided to reboot their entire comic book line from scratch. There had been other reboots before, as early as the 60s with The Flash 123, where they found out there were two worlds. But every time they sort of rebooted, some people retain memories from the previous Earth. Like, it was more of a continuation, but this time it was like a clean break, which upset many people. And I don't think it would be exaggerating to say that DC has basically spent the next 15 years sort of backpedaling from this decision. But with this reboot, they decided to put out 52 number ones. So they announced 52 new comic series, all starting at number one. And you'll scratch your head at some of these. It was really a lot of just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what would stick. So I decided to read the first issue of every one, see if they're worth your time, see if I would be interested in continuing to read them. I've read some of the full runs already, so I'll let you know if those are worth getting into. But it's definitely an interesting experiment. So without further ado, let's get into it. Right off the bat is Action Comics number one. Yep. So this is the first of two Superman series. This is... It's not that strange. DC Comics has always had multiple series for their truly iconic heroes, and Action Comics is our first Superman one. This one was written by Grant Morrison, which immediately sort of lends some credence to it. He's an industry legend. He does like to get weird and wacky with this, and it's a little strange because it starts with like Superman in his hometown. He's not quite like Superman yet. It's like his early days. It's pretty interesting because he's always like Grant Morrison. When he writes Superman, it's always filled with like hope and optimism. If you've read All-Star Superman, it's incredible. But many people have pointed out, New 52 Superman is like a little bit, he's like a dude bro. He's kind of arrogant. So it's pretty interesting. In this All-Star Comics, he's got like a t-shirt and jeans, and a cape. He can't really fly yet. He's like leaping buildings in a single bound. It's sort of scaled it back. Again, it's like early days Superman. I guess he's figuring out, his powers at this point. In the first issue, Lex Luthor's just sort of in the background with the government monitoring Superman. Superman's just sort of doing like bog standard saving the day at this point. It's more just to set the tone for what the series is about. But again, I don't know if Superman grows out of like his cocky attitude, but apparently there were issues with Grant Morrison writing the All-Star Superman, and I believe Dan Jurgens was writing the Superman, the regular New 52 Superman, and there were conflicts because Grant Morrison wanted to make changes in Superman's past that would conflict with like the modern present day Superman. So it was kind of a mess. I don't hear a lot of people really talk about this comic book run all that much. It seemed fine from the first issue. Maybe you want to give it a miss, or if cocky sort of young adult Superman sounds cool to you, give it a go. The next one I found super. I raised my eyebrow initially at this. This is All-Star Western number one. I thought it was interesting that they were going with a Western title. Clearly, I didn't know anything because it's basically the Jonah Hex book, and you can tell from looking at the cover. Jonah Hex is one of my favorite, I would say, obscure DC characters. If you've seen maybe like the DC animated universe, you'll probably be familiar. He's like, I always thought he was like Two-Face, but in like a Western setting, but he's just a cowboy who got his face messed up. This one is, this New 52 version is actually pretty good. I read a couple volumes of it. It's Jonah Hex in sort of 1800s Gotham City, and there's like a Jack the Ripper style criminal out there. And so Jonah Hex teams up with Amadeus Arkham, who would go on to, create Arkham Asylum. And they do sort of like a detective mystery Jack the Ripper sort of plot. So it's pretty interesting. As the run goes on, it sort of expounds from there. Eventually, Jonah Hex is like, I'm so sick of Gotham City. I need to get out of here. And so it's definitely worth reading. If you like Jonah Hex, if you like Westerns, if you like his little Confederate hat with the little tassels or whatever, give it a go. It's pretty awesome. All right, next is Animal Man. Animal Man is like one of those heroes. He's almost like Mr. Miracle, where I wonder if he's sort of like a joke character. Obviously, they're not. Animal Man, he is, for those of you who don't know, his name is Buddy Baker, and he can tap into the red, sort of like how Swamp Thing can tap into the green. The red allows him to like borrow attributes from animals, so like he can be like strong as an elephant and stuff like that. Obviously, like this comic ties a lot into like animal rights and protecting animals, which is good. But this book gets freaky, pretty messed up. It's by Geoff Lemire, however you say it. And he takes this into some pretty freaky places. Like, Buddy Baker is having super strange visions, apocalyptic in nature. He's got like a wife and kids, and he sees some freaky stuff with them. And so it sort of immediately draws you in because it's like his family's sort of in danger here. It's a really interesting twist on, like I said, what might have been maybe kind of I don't want to say a joke character, but more of a character people don't take as seriously. And honestly, sometimes the New 52 is great for these types of characters. It really gives them a fresh start, a fresh take that people hadn't seen before. And Animal Man is one of those books that are pretty highly acclaimed. I've not read the rest of the run, but if it interests you, it would definitely be worth jumping into. All right, speaking of characters that are a joke, or at least were by this standards, we've got Aquaman. This is by Geoff Johns. Geoff Johns is basically like running the show at DC. I don't know if he is at this point, but many of the pretty critically acclaimed books of this era are by Geoff Johns. And he loves Aquaman, so he's going to give it like the best treatment, and he does. Aquaman New 52 is probably one of the best things to come out of the New 52. And I know that's funny to say because he's just like a guy who talks to fish or whatever, which is actually addressed in the book. Geoff Johns does a great job at sort of like hanging a lantern, or at least like poking fun at Aquaman, mentioning what people sort of joke with him about. There's like this scene where he goes to like a restaurant and he orders fish and chips, and people are like, "What? You talk to fish? How can you eat fish? That's terrible." He's like, "I don't talk to fish." Like, and there's parts where he shows up to save the day and the cops don't really take him seriously. They're like, "What? Why couldn't we get Superman or something?" And then Aquaman like flips a car and wrecks the villain's day. I don't know. Like, it really shows how kind of underrated Aquaman is. And so it's, like I said, the art is by Ivan Reis, who is just an incredible artist. The story delves into Aquaman's relationship with Mera, which I always find refreshing, where a lot of superheroes sort of go in and out of relationships. Aquaman always sort of has this steady relationship, and at least in the previous continuity, a marriage with Mera. And I find that super interesting. So it's definitely worth getting into if you liked the movie. The movie obviously like has its problems, but the comic is sort of, they go to the trench. So if you like that part of the movie, if you like the movie, this is like a more, I guess, traditional, but probably a better expounding on the character of Aquaman. So it's, like I said, it's one of the best runs of the New 52. So if you're going to read any of them, this is definitely one to check out. Next is Batgirl. This is written by Gail Simone, who has done like a lot of work on Birds of Prey in previous years. I think Wonder Woman, she might have had a run on Wonder Woman. She's always pretty good at doing a pretty compelling female lead, though maybe that's controversial to say for some people. I don't know. But I read Batgirl. I read most of the New 52 run, actually. It starts off really strong. We've got Barbara Gordon returning as Batgirl. She has done the whole like shot through the spine by the Joker, was in a wheelchair for a bit, but she's rehabilitated herself and she's walking again. So in the New 52, we see her stepping back into the bat boots and going out to sort of, what's the word? Like get back into the swing of things. But to oppose her is this villain called the Mirror. And it's kind of dumb. But the Mirror, basically, he hates it when people cheat death and find miracles from tragedy. And so he's after Barbara Gordon. She obviously shows up because she overcame tragedy. It sounds dumb how I'm saying it, but if you like the Bat family and Batgirl in particular, it's a pretty good book. She goes into like her relationship with her dad, Commissioner Gordon. Even her mom shows up from time to time in the book too. So it's a really good. I think Barbara Gordon is handled pretty well in this. So if you like her, if you like the Bat family, if you're a Bat family completionist, you definitely don't want to give this one a miss. And now we are at Batman. I cannot understate how good this run is. This is the greatest success story of the New 52 for sure. Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo, Batman, New 52. It is such an incredible run. I think it maybe dips in quality like 6 volumes in, but not even that much. They really take the character in some interesting, different places, but it's still very Batman. If you're familiar with the Court of Owls, though, this first issue they were sort of invented in this run. So if you like the Court of Owls, if you're interested in that mystique, but feel like they're never done right in other media, this is definitely worth checking out. In the first issue, Batman is basically just investigating the first little breadcrumb trails of the Court of Owls, which will eventually become a bigger problem. You have interactions with Gordon. Throughout the run, he meets up with the Bat family. There's the incredible Joker, Death of the Family story arc. I mean, it's just, this run is been elevated to all-time legendary DC status, at least in my mind. I don't really know how people think of it years on, because it's been a while since it ended or even came out. But if you like Batman, even if you're sick of Batman, I think this is a fresh enough take, if you've never read it, that you'll be sort of reinvigorated on a different take of Batman. And again, I say different, but it's still very much Bruce Wayne. You hear his inner monologue, which I always think is the best sort of way to do Batman. He's grappling with some interesting problems that he probably hadn't up until this point. So it's definitely, I can't understate it or overstate it, whatever the expression is. Get into it. And we have the second Bat book. Again, like I said, throughout the years in DC, we've had several Bat books going at once. They always focus on different things, maybe different characters. This is Batman: The Dark Knight. This is by David Finch, who is a great artist. He's also a great author, writer. And so I think he understands Batman. This book, though, it sort of just focuses on smaller tales. I think rather than like the massive Bat family affecting issues, this is very sort of down, and it's more about Batman and his own character, I suppose. In this book, Batman just keeps talking about how he's like, he's not going to take crap from anyone. He's really not afraid of anything, and he keeps telling us that. I felt like the art wasn't quite as good as what I'd expect from a David Finch book. I think David Finch is one of the all-time greats. But either way, Bruce Wayne, I guess, is being investigated by like some internal affairs kind of thing, which I always thought they were more about the police, but I don't know. In the end, Two-Face gets like juiced up on Venom, like a big Bane situation, and that's sort of the cliffhanger. I haven't really felt compelled to go back to this. Maybe it's worth getting into. I think it ends pretty quickly, though. I don't think they really had enough readers to sustain 3 Bat books. So, I mean, maybe if you want a short flash in the pan sort of story, Batman The Dark Knight, you can probably check it out. So, and then we've got Batman and Robin. So right before the New 52 kicked off, right before they rebooted everything, Damian Wayne, the fifth Robin, the son of Batman, he showed up on the scene. He was the Robin to Dick Grayson while Dick Grayson was being Batman briefly. And then Bruce Wayne returned from the dead or whatever. And it was sort of like, oh, it's Batman and son. How are they going to handle this? Robin, Damian Wayne, he was raised by the League of Assassins. It's a whole thing. He wants to kill people. And Batman's like, don't kill people. And then they rebooted everything. But I think it was a good move because they kept that dynamic. Basically, in the New 52, like I said, it was a clean break, a clean reboot. But when they rebooted things, they basically said, Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, Tim Drake, they were all Robin. And they're no longer Robin anymore. They grew up, I guess. But they sort of truncated like the time scale. But now Damian Wayne, he's the Robin. So this is Batman and Robin, Batman and Son. This is by Peter J. Tomasi, who I think he kind of understands Damian Wayne when a lot of people didn't. I think when he was first unveiled, he's sort of like a little brat. I kind of think that's like a little bit of his charm now. But he was like a lunatic. He's like lunatic Robin who just wants to murder. And maybe people didn't like that so much. I think Tim Drake was such a great Robin. It's kind of hard to fill his shoes, so they sort of went the other direction there. But if you've seen the movie, there's a movie called Batman vs. Robin. It's an animated movie. It's very it's got a little Court of Owls stuff, which isn't in this book, but it's pretty explicitly based on this title. Up till this point in the book, Batman and Robin are sort of already like a little bit into their partnership as crime fighting duo. It's really just sort of them working as a pair. It's Batman trying to make sure he's not killing people, trying to teach him what it is to be Robin, but also like a hero, someone who can, I guess, wear the Wayne name a little bit, can be brought into Batman's vision for Gotham City. I think later on the run sort of brings in someone who knew Batman's identity, and of course, because that happens a lot, but I think it's really good that you're really there for the relationship between Bruce Wayne and Damian Wayne. It's very sweet. It's always affecting when Batman like hugs someone, and you see that plenty. So if you're interested in like a father-son dynamic, this is definitely worth getting into. Now we've got Batwing. Batwing is really interesting, I would say. It's almost like DC's answer to the Falcon and Black Panther a little bit. Pre-New 52, again, they've still carried a lot of stuff over from pre-New 52. But Batman created what was called Batman Incorporated, where he went across the globe and he set up like Batman in a bunch of different countries. And this is sort of the African Batman. His name is David Zavimbe. This is written by Judd Winick, who's done a lot of great Batman stuff. Again, David Zavimbe, he's like the member of Batman Incorporated. He has a high-tech bat suit with these wings, and he patrols the city of Tinashe, is what it's called, in Africa. But like that's at night, he's like patrolling the city. But in the day, he's part of the police force. So he's sort of like working both angles there. The art is really incredible. It's done by Ben Oliver. It's really fantastic. Also, if you know anything about Batwing, eventually this Batwing suit gets given to Luke Fox, the son of Lucius Fox. And so I'm kind of interested to see how it gets from David to Luke, like across the globe, because Luke is usually like a Gotham City-centric villain. But, I mean, in this you'll see David tackle crime syndicates in Africa. I think there was a little bit of a supernatural twist, if I remember correctly. It was a while since I read this one, I'm not gonna lie, but it's like I said, if you want like a Batman flavored adventure in a different part of the world, it's definitely worth looking into. And now we have Batwoman. This is like Batwoman versus La Llorona, if you know the myth of like the weeping lady from Spanish or Latin American folklore. I can't remember the specifics there. It's like a ghostly myth that I guess Batwoman is entangling with. If you don't know who Batwoman is, I find it interesting. She's actually the cousin of Bruce Wayne on his mom's side. Her name is Catherine Kane. His mom was Martha Kane before she became Martha Wayne. She's like kind of if I remember, she's like a military sort of like, her dad kind of sucks. He's like this really hardened military man who is like, I'll stop at nothing to get my results or whatever. She also was in the military, so she comes from that sort of hardened background, and you see that play out here. I just find it interesting that she's sort of one of Bruce Wayne's only sort of family members by blood, and you see that play out a little bit here. I haven't read the rest of the volume here. I always really like the idea of Batwoman though, so I think I'm probably going to come back for this. You do also see her cousin Betty Kane, aka Flamebird, so another cousin showing up, and they do some adventures together. But yeah, like I said, they come across this ghost, and they're investigating this ghost that like cries into the mouths of her victims and drowns them. It's pretty weird. J.H. Williams III and Haden Blackman are the team working on this book. And they've done some great work in the past. I think this run goes on to be pretty spectacular, maybe in the Rebirth era. So it's probably worth getting into. I am interested in looking into it myself. So, and now we get into Birds of Prey. This kind of feels like the first dud. I don't know. Maybe there were duds before this. The Birds of Prey is such a great team idea. You usually have like Black Canary, Batgirl, the Huntress, this team of really like bad A super heroines, in the DC universe. In this book is penned by Duane Swierczynski, however you say it. But in this one, the team is consisted of Black Canary, Katana, Starling, and Poison Ivy. It's a weird team for sure. Apparently, in the book, Starling doesn't even really last all that long on the team. I've never even heard of that character before, though. So, like, again, maybe they're just throwing stuff at the wall. Either way, in this book, they've turned the Birds of Prey into fugitives who are sort of running from the law, trying to clear their name, rather than just being a female superhero team. So that's kind of disappointing. Poison Ivy doesn't even really feature in the first issue. So I'm interested to see how she gets tangled up with them. So I don't know. Personally, it's just a far cry from the previous like Chuck Dixon, Gail Simone era of Birds of Prey. Like I said, I think Rebirth kind of brings it back to where it should have been, which is sort of what Rebirth was all about, sort of bringing things back to where it should have been. So I don't even think this book lasted that long. So maybe give it a skip. And now we've got Blackhawks. Yep. It's like, you ever been reading a Justice League team book or a Justice League movie, and those dudes in like black leather military outfits, you see them in the background, and it's like, what's their deal? That's the Blackhawks. In the comics, I think they were like a World War II team. But, of course, New 52, it's almost like if the 90s were extreme, the 2010s were like, we got to make things real. Like, things got to be real, like real world. And so in this one, the Blackhawks are like, instead of being World War II ace pilots, they're like a special ops team. I don't know. It's written by Chuck Austin and Mike Costa, but Chuck Austin, his name doesn't even really appear on much of the publication for this. I don't know if he had much hand in it at all. I don't know the story. But again, I really had to try not to like skim this. I don't remember much of the team very well. There's an Irishman in it who's Ukrainian, and that's a funny joke because they're like, you're Irish, and he's like, I'm from Ukraine. So it's like, okay. I don't know. I'm not gonna lie. I don't remember much of this. I think they cross over with Deathstroke later, so that's interesting. I don't know. This didn't last long. This had like one trade paperback issue. I think or volume. It had like 8 issues. Clearly this did not stick to the wall when they threw it at the wall. So, yeah. All right, now we've got Blue Beetle. Not Ted Kord Blue Beetle, which is a bummer. We have Jaime Reyes, who is also really great. If you've seen the Blue Beetle movie, a lot of what you see here is sort of in line with that, which I respect in that movie for them sort of keeping pretty close here. It starts out with the race of the Blue Beetles, the Scarabs. They're launching through space. They're almost like reverse Green Lanterns. I don't know. They're like Green Lanterns where they send these Scarabs out to different planets and they implant on someone and then it like assimilates that person into the Reach is what it's called. And then there's this army of Blue Beetles across the galaxy. So this one, Kaji Da is the name of the Blue Beetle, of the beetle that lands on Earth. It lands in South America. The Mayans pick it up. There's some architects who find it in the present day. And then we flash to Jaime Reyes, who's just living his life, getting bullied at school or whatever. He's playing soccer and he runs into a gang fight on the streets of the city he lives in, and he grabs a backpack. I think he was trying to grab his own, but this backpack has that beetle in it. It's like somehow it made it from the ancient Mayans to this gang who were trading it or whatever. It's in his backpack and it latches on to Jaime, and it's pretty like body horror-esque. It looks painful, him turning into the Blue Beetle. This issue was almost like, just jam him into the Blue Beetle suit as much as possible. We need to get this run going. And that's sort of what happens. It ends with him becoming the full sort of Blue Beetle. For those who don't know, there's like 4 Blue Beetles, maybe 3 throughout the years. Only a couple could use the beetle like Jaime does. Ted Kord, the one probably most people know, he couldn't get it to like latch onto him. He just developed a bunch of technology from it. So it's interesting to bring back Jaime Reyes, who can use the suit, and it's a little more like, it's like Iron Man. He's almost like Kid Iron Man with this alien technology suit. And I think later Ted Kord does show up. Definitely in the Rebirth era, he shows up. So it's interesting. It's almost like a Spider-Man sort of DC's Spider-Man in a way, because I feel like they're always looking for one. And Jaime Reyes he's a great character, I think. And Blue Beetle, it's just an interesting concept. So I don't know, give it a look. And now we have Captain Atom. Captain Atom, I honestly don't know a whole ton about. I usually see him again in team movies where something goes disastrously wrong and he like nukes a city, because he's basically made of atomic energy. But here in this book, he's only slightly melting down. I guess the story is the more he uses his powers, the more he starts to break down, and I think he's eventually going to like go nuclear. So he's trying to find a cure for that. It's kind of cool because if you don't know, Dr. Manhattan from Watchmen was sort of based on Captain Atom. So it's interesting to see like what would Dr. Manhattan be like if he kept all of his humanity. And Captain Atom, he's still like a person. He's not omniscient. He's not godlike like Dr. Manhattan is, but he's almost as powerful. He could melt the world if he really wanted to. There's not a ton of exciting stuff going on in this book, I think. I don't think the trades lasted all that long either. But it is sort of an interesting design for the character. He's got like that weird hair situation going on. So I don't know. Another thing where, again, I think there's a lot of minor characters they wanted to expand on in the New 52, and I just don't think this one landed. And here we have Catwoman. I feel like every Catwoman story I read is like basically the same, where like she is doing her job being a cat burglar, but someone's onto her, and then they blow up her apartment or something, and then she has to like go on the run and takes a job in like a club where she has to beat up a club full of like, skeezy dudes or whatever and liberate all the dancers in the club, something like that. Which is basically what happens here. She goes to a club in disguise. She's trashing some mobsters. Her apartment gets blown up on her way back. And then she meets up with Batman, and they have some steamy rooftop lovemaking. And it's pretty gratuitous, I would say. I don't know. I guess if that's what you're here for in your Catwoman books, I don't think this landed well with people. Maybe it did, a certain audience. But I just think Catwoman has the potential for some really great stories. If you've read Darwin Cook's Catwoman book, I forget the name. I will flash it on the screen here. She's got an interesting emotional core to her character, I think. She's not quite a bad guy. She's not quite a good guy. She's got a heart, but she's also out for herself here. I just don't know if it really comes through when she's just like meeting up with Batman to just like I said, if you're a Catwoman completionist, that's how it always goes. If you're a completionist, read this, but I don't know if I would read it so much if you're looking for like a deep story. Okay, and then we have DC Universe Presents. Again, this is more also just throwing stuff at the wall. DC Universe Presents, I believe every issue was a different character to be focused on. And almost, I feel like maybe spin them off if they were popular enough, if that specific issue was popular enough. So the first issue focuses on Dead Man, aka Boston Brand. He was like a circus performer. He died. Now he's a ghost and he possesses other people. I really like Dead Man. So this adventure in the first issue, and I guess only issue with Dead Man of DC Universe Presents, he's sort of swapping lives with others, learning from them, becoming enlightened, bettering himself, I guess. It's kind of compelling, I would say. It's just a shame that it didn't spin off into any other stuff. I believe he shows up in other team books like Justice League Dark, which is really good. We'll get to that. But again, this DC Universe, it is just like a spotlight idea. And I think it's cool because it gives you a taste of characters that have their own books, characters that don't have their own books. We get Kid Flash, Black Lightning, Arsenal, Vandal Savage. So again, I don't know if you would really read this like sequentially like that. I would almost just skim through it, find a character you like and read it, and that might be the joy of it. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting that they did that. Tried to give lesser known characters more time in the spotlight. And now we have Deathstroke. Deathstroke is probably my favorite comic book anti-hero. I don't know why. Is it just his design that carries it for me? I don't know. Most great Deathstroke books are sort of like, he's sort of like the anti-Batman. He has a Batman family, like a Deathstroke family, but they all sort of hate each other, and he's like the worst father imaginable. And they all do favors for him because they sort of feel some obligation for him, but he kind of like sucks, and he's training his kids to be soldiers basically. And every time you think he's just being nice, it's usually just like to get them to do something he wants for them. Fortunately, the beginning of the New 52 run is just like not that. It's like Deathstroke's like his handler basically gets him on a team with this young military group called the Alpha Dogs, DAWGZ, if I remember correctly. And he hates it. He hates them. He hates these stupid kids. Deathstroke is like way overpowered in this. I think there's one point where he like flicks a paperclip and cuts a fly in half because his like reflexes are that great. Yeah, it didn't last long. It ends really grimly, if I remember. Eventually, Rob Liefeld takes over this Deathstroke run, and then it gets canceled. But it does get rebooted. It gets relaunched with Tony S. Daniels writing for Deathstroke, and that run is really awesome. And then the Rebirth run gets really good too. So I would maybe skip the first initial New 52 run and go to the Tony S. Daniel one. Great art, great writing. If you like Deathstroke, that's where I'd start. And now we have Demon Knights. If you know who Etrigan is, he's like that demon who rhymes when he talks. Everything he says rhymes, which is, I think, kind of funny. That's what this book is about. It's also a medieval book. It takes place maybe not medieval. It just takes place 1,000 years before, during the time of knights. Or maybe it was the Renaissance. I can't quite remember. I think it was knights, because it's called Demon Knights. That would probably make sense. But it shows Etrigan being bonded to Jason Blood. If you don't know, Jason Blood is sort of who Etrigan embodies when he's trying to go incognito, look like a regular person. But Jason Blood is his own person. It's not like he's possessed, though. But like I said, it's mostly sort of humans just mucking about, and Etrigan shows up once. What is interesting, though, is we do see Vandal Savage, who, if you don't know, he's like a caveman. He's lived through all the generations. And so he shows up in this medieval setting. So I'm weirdly kind of interested to go back just to see where this goes. Just for that little Vandal Savage plug. I haven't read more than the first issue since this, though. But I like Etrigan enough. I like Vandal Savage being a villain, so maybe it's worth jumping into just for the uniqueness alone. And now we have Detective Comics. This is usually the other Bat book. Similar to how Action Comics is the Superman book, Detective Comics is a Batman book. So Detective Comics, this is written by Tony S. Daniels. Again, great artist, great writer. He is really flexing Batman's detective skills in this book, which I find interesting. We all love Batman. We all want him to do more Sherlock Holmesy sort of detective stuff, and that's what's going on in this book. This is primarily, it seems like the Joker is sort of the antagonist of this book, while the Batman book we talked about by Scott Snyder sort of benches the Joker for a bit. This one goes all in on it, and it sort of, I was confused when I read The Death of the Family. Joker's got his face sliced off and taped back to his skull. I think Detective Comics explains how that happened, which I missed. So most of these Bat books do crossover like that. Additionally, in this book is the Dollmaker. The Dollmaker is a villain I feel like there's Professor Pig and there's the Birthday Boy. It's just a large guy who is just not right in the head, who kills people and turns them into dolls. Not quite original, but that is who shows up in this New 52 Detective Comics run. Again, I think you'll get the Bat family and Batman himself a little more fleshed out if you go into this. Detective Comics in Rebirth, the Rebirth era, is really strong. So if you want sort of a background in that before you get to it, I don't think it's necessary to read it, but I always am interested in seeing what the Detective Comics series is doing. It's one of that, and Action Comics is DC Comics' longest running series. So it's always worth checking out. I don't think it's ever going to go anywhere. I don't think it's going to get canceled. So it's probably worth checking out here in the New 52. And now we have The Flash. The Flash here is penned and drawn by Francis Manapul, who does incredible art. This is, like I said, I've read a lot of Rebirth Flash, so I was interested to go back to this. Weirdly enough, I didn't find it as compelling as Rebirth Flash. This was, again, it's sort of a victim of that 2010, everything's got to be real. It has a lot of Barry Allen being a cop. He's got his romantic partner, Patty Spivot, which, if you watch the show, Patty showed up, and I felt like they had way more chemistry than him and Iris did on the show. So I was interested to see, Patty Spivot is in the comics. Again, I don't think she lasts all that long, because basically immediately Iris shows up in this issue, and she's dogging Barry, trying to do some investigative journalism or whatever. In the book, Barry's college friend Manuel, he's getting tangled up with the wrong people, and it's sort of dragging Barry into the conflict, and subsequently the Flash as well. Again, I think this the New 52 Flash run gets a lot more maybe interesting than that. Francis Manapul does great, like I said, art. I think Brett Booth eventually hops on. I can't remember who writes it later. So if you like Brett Booth, that's cool. I really like his art. Some people don't like it, but I like Flash. I always have liked Flash. I've been meaning to go back and finish the whole New 52 run as well, because a lot of these successful New 52 runs last the full 10 volumes before Rebirth happened, and Flash is one of those, so it's worth checking out. Here we have Frankenstein, Agent of S.H.A.D.E. S-H-A-D-E, which, what does it stand for? I can't remember. But this is sort of the Creature Commando, if you're familiar with that Creature Commando show that came out recently. This is also written by Geoff Lemire, or Lemire, however you say it. This is a lot like Hellboy, kind of Hellboy and the BPRD, if you're familiar with the Dark Horse comic Hellboy. So I don't have many complaints. Frankenstein, he's sort of assigned a team of characters very similar to him, like these monsters, basically. Bride of Frankenstein. Ray Palmer is there, which is interesting. The Atom, because he doesn't really get any comic book run or like any real screen time within the New 52, so I'm interested to see him here. This is one that ran 17 issues. I don't think it would be that much of a slog to finish. It's entertaining at the very least. Like most comics, it's not really bad, it's probably just dumb. But it's worth checking out. I think I would like to go back to this just to see. Frankenstein, he's always like just one of those oddball characters you see in DC, and I love seeing those people fleshed out in a series dedicated to them. So I also think they cross over with Justice League Dark as well. You can fault the New 52 for a lot of things, but they were really trying to make like an interconnected continuity. So it's worth sort of just checking out who's going to show up in these books. Then we have Fury of Firestorm, the Nuclear Man. I'm not going to lie, this was one of my least favorite ones in the New 52. Rather than doing the whole like Robbie Raymond, that's his name, Ronnie Raymond, and Dr. It's escaping me. My Flash knowledge, watching the Flash show is escaping me. Martin Stein. Martin Stein is the name. Rather than them being together, we have Ronnie and Jason. They're in school. They're mortal school enemies. There's just a lot of heavy-handed high school kind of drama here. There's a team of super spies trying to get the Matrix. They're trying to find the Matrix, and Martin Stein gave it to Jason, but Jason activates it near Ronnie as the spies show up, and they go supernova. And for a moment, I was like, okay, we got two people. They aren't sharing the same body. We have two firestorms here. I think that could be cool. That could be an interesting team dynamic. And then, no, they combine into like a big Hulk monster firestorm guy. I don't... Firestorm, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I haven't read the dark arts here. I haven't read the deep magic of Firestorm, but I just don't get the character that much. I think he's cool when he shows up in a team book, but does he need an entire series dedicated to him? I don't know. I haven't read it all, but again, it didn't last that long, so it couldn't have been that great. And then we have Green Arrow. Again, I love Green Arrow so much. I love his little Robin Hood hat. I love his boxing glove arrows, and you're not going to get that with this New 52 run. He is just like gritty. This is the Arrow if it were like a comic book in the DC universe. He doesn't even have his cool little mustache and goatee. So what is the point? He is like the realest, grittiest Green Arrow you can conceive of here. And I still think it's kind of dumb. I don't know. Oliver Queen, he's in Paris. He's fighting generic bad guys. He's got some interesting like future technology. He's got like a pocket bow and arrow that unfolds. I don't know. He throws these little like discs. He's doing like kung fu. I don't know. And then there's like a big explosion at the end, and they're like this YouTuber streaming gang, and there's this explosion, and it's supposed to be like a big reveal, but I'm like, who are these guys? But clearly it's like, find out in the next issue. And I'm like, I won't. Except I did go on to read like the first volume, and I still don't remember much of what happened here. It's sort of like low rent Batman, which is the worst mistake you can make as a Green Arrow creator. You really want to set him apart from Batman because he's very similar, and I just don't think it really works here. Again, like so many things, I think the rebirth era of Green Arrow brought it back. So Again, though, it's pretty interesting because Green Arrow wants to join the Justice League in the New 52 universe, and they don't really let him, and I find that funny as well. But maybe that's mostly confined to the Justice League run. I don't know. We'll get to that. And here we have Green Lantern. There's a couple Green Lantern books here, and I think all of them are pretty warranted for the most part, but this one is like your Hal Jordan book. Hal Jordan is... Here's what's complicated about this. So Geoff Johns is writing Green Lantern here. And it is a continuation of his run pre-New 52. That's right. This, even though it's called New 52 issue 1, is not part of the reboot, I guess. I read this and was super confused, and I had to look it up. It's still part of that Green Lantern Rebirth run, which I find so funny. Can you imagine the boardroom meeting where Geoff Johns, who's in charge, in my mind, of this whole initiative, he's like, all right, guys, I'm super sorry. All of your books right now are canceled. We're rebooting everything. I'm super sorry. We'll find places for you. And it cuts to like the Bat team, and we got Brian Q. Miller, and he's like, hey, my Batgirl book with Stephanie Brown as Batgirl, that's been going pretty good, actually. I really like it. Fans seem to really resonate with it. Can we keep that in? And he's like, Geoff Johns is like, I'm so sorry. No, we won't be able to do that. We'll find a different place for you. And then we have the Red Robin's, like the Red Robin team, the guy who wrote that. His name is on the screen now. He's like, what about Red Robin? We just found a really good groove for him, and the whole Bat family in general is in a really interesting spot. And Geoff Johns is like, again, sorry, this reboot, we just can't. Everything is being rebooted. And Dan Jurgens is probably like, well, at least we know you, Geoff Johns, you who love all your things you're writing right now. At least you'll be rebooting everything, right? And Geoff Johns is like, no, I'm going to finish my Green Lantern story. You see, it's actually really important to me. And I don't know, I imagine everyone who argued probably got fired. But because Geoff Johns is a pretty good Green Lantern writer, the Green Lantern New 52 run is really good. It ends... Geoff Johns ends his run in volume 3 of the trades, and it ends really strong. I've also gone through to read all of Green Lantern through New 52 and through Rebirth. It goes up and down, but it's still worth reading. I really like Hal Jordan. I like the team dynamics. You see all the other Green Lanterns show up. You know, Guy Gardner, John Stewart, Kyle Rayner. They all show up. It's a really fun time. It also introduces new Green Lanterns, Simon Baz? I don't know. I read it in my head differently every time. So it introduces a new Green Lantern of Earth. So if you're a Green Lantern fan, it's great to go into this just with the caveat that you're going to want to remember that it starts before the New 52 rebooted. So yeah. And then we have the Green Lantern Corps. This is another comic book series. This focuses more on John Stewart and Guy Gardner. It's sort of like the buddy cop Green Lantern comic. So it's them. Guy Gardner, he's a little bit of a hothead, obviously, as you know. John Stewart, he's like this architect. He's this grounded hero, and they do missions together. Though, since it's the New 52, we don't get like a obscene bowl cut on Guy Gardner. He just has like a regular haircut. So it dismays me that we don't see that comic book silliness of yesteryear. But still, they really lean into the fact that Guy Gardner is full of himself. It's just like I said, a fun dynamic. It's almost like what I wish this Green Lantern show that's coming out would be like, just them doing cool space adventures. I think it's a blast, though. The relationship is explored really well. It's actually kind of dark and a little grim. This is also by Tomasi here. I think he is bringing a really fun tack to the relationship. Again, the conflict of the series doesn't really kick off yet, so this is more just introducing Guy Gardner and John Stewart. But if you're a fan of them, get into it. And the last Green Lantern book here is Green Lantern New Guardians. This is the Kyle Rayner focused Green Lantern book. It's just I don't quite understand it because we have non New 52 Green Lantern in the Green Lantern series, and then we just have Kyle Rayner. All of his history pre-New 52 has just sort of been whitewashed a little bit, and so it's so confusing. Again, right from the get-go, they just made it like they were trying to simplify things, and they just made it confusing. So whatever, I don't know. Basically, in this comic, the Guardians of O.A.C, they're all dead except for one, and Kyle Rayner he gets one of the rings sent from the Guardians of Oa, but he ditches the dumb 90s outfit and he's got like a cool new outfit. What I find interesting about this though is that he starts manifesting the other colors of the Green Lantern Corps, and it sort of doesn't sit well with some of the other members. So this is almost a team book with like Star Sapphire, Saint Walker, Kyle Rayner, as they find out what is going on with Kyle Rayner. For those who are familiar with Kyle Rayner, though, he's probably like a White Lantern. I didn't go on to read much more of this series, but of all the 3 Green Lantern series here, maybe this is the one not to read. I don't know. I didn't find it all that compelling. But again, if you like Kyle Rayner, they have a whole book dedicated to him, so it's worth getting into. And then we have Grifter. So for those who don't know, Jim Lee, one of the great superstars, comic book artists, he left Marvel back in the 90s. He created Image Comics. And for Image Comics, he created Wildstorm. Wildstorm Comics was Jim Lee's baby. It had a bunch of characters. Jim Lee eventually went to DC around this era, and he sold all of Wildstorm Comics to DC. Grifter is one of those heroes. You've probably seen him maybe in the Flashpoint Paradox movie. He's in it. That was, again, sort of meant to like fold the Wildstorm characters into the DC universe. Grifter here, I did not find this issue all that compelling, if I'm honest. It almost feels like Born Identity, where Grifter's like kind of amnesiac. He doesn't understand his powers. He doesn't understand who he is or what he's doing. There's voices around him. It's like a spy agency thing. Maybe I should have read more than one issue to get a grasp on it, but I didn't find it all that compelling to continue reading about it. So I don't know. I think they should have built him up in a different series first before making his own. I don't know. Weirdly enough, he shows up in like more of the modern Batman comics. So like I like when he's around. I just really like his character design. But I did not find this book to be all that great. And then we have Hawk and Dove. Hawk and Dove are characters I know about, but don't know a lot about. This is written by Rob Liefeld. And you can tell. I don't know. This just feels like a hangover from 90s comics. Not a lot happens here. Dove is all sweet, and Hawk is all super angry, and it's like testosterone or whatever. So I don't know. I didn't think it was particularly good. I thought it was really loud. It's very Rob Liefeld. It only lasted 8 issues. I don't think you even need to read this. And then we have I, Vampire. This actually lasted like 20 issues. So it almost got like the full 2-year, almost a 2-year run here. So this is Andrew and Mary. They're vampires. They're immortal. They love each other, but they're on opposite sides of the vampire struggle, conflict. It's sort of like, I don't get it. They can turn into wolves, it looks like, or maybe I misread that, but I'm pretty sure I saw one of them turn into a wolf, which is like, what is that about? They're vampires. I'm not 100% certain on the lore here. I know that I, Vampire is sort of a long-running series. I know it seems like it was maybe like a Vertigo title, or should have been. They give some nods to like Superman. There's some blatant references to the wider DC universe. I don't know if I'll read this. I've read enough DC versus vampires or whatever to get my fill of Andrew the I Vampire Man. But like I said, if you like vampires, give it a go. Let me know if it's great. And then we have Justice League. Justice League is, again, one of those all-time greats from the New 52, in my opinion. I think people don't like the characterization of some of these people, but Geoff Johns is writing Justice League, and it, I think, is pretty solid all the way through. Some of the volumes throughout the, I think, 10 volumes aren't as good. But the first one, Origins, is really like a great story of how the team is like getting together. People are meeting each other for the first time. Batman and Superman sort of meet each other. Like, Batman is aware of Superman, and it contains a Batman versus Superman fight, and it's pretty interesting. Also, Batman and Green Lantern have a very interesting, fun relationship. Again, though, it's not the Green Lantern from the New 52 run, because that guy is still the Green Lantern from pre-New 52. This is like your Hal Jordan New 52 clean cut, like, Hal Jordan. And so he's like super arrogant. He thinks he's like, I'm the super cop. Earth is my whole territory. I don't know what y'all are doing here. And he's so perplexed by Batman. He doesn't know if he's like magic or not. And so that's pretty interesting. There was Justice League War, the animated movie. It basically follows this in this first volume, Justice League Origins. But a lot of it is Cyborg. We see Cyborg's origin story here. It's all really compelling. I think all the characters get a pretty decent screen time, page time here. This also starts the Superman Wonder Woman relationship, because I guess in the New 52, Superman isn't with Lois Lane. He's with Wonder Woman. So if I find that interesting. I don't think it was executed particularly well, but it's worth checking out. I really think, we have Aquaman, we have Batman, we have Justice League. Those are like the standouts here so far. So definitely give it a read. And then we have Justice League Dark. This is a really fun team. This is the team. It's got Zatanna. It's got Constantine. It's got Deadman. It's got Madame Xanadu. It's got June Moon, who is the Enchantress. Or I actually think they're trying to find her because she's wigging out and going to cause some apocalypse. But this is really fun. I don't like Zatanna's costume. I don't know why they changed it. What is that about? She has one of the most iconic costumes in DC Comics, in comic history. And they're just like, nah, make her 2010s-esque. It's a minor gripe. Justice League Dark is really awesome. I've read many of the volumes going on from this. It's totally worth it. Definitely give it a look if you like the weird, dark, magical side of the DC universe. And now we have Justice League International. This is almost like the Booster Gold book. This is, if in the 80s, I believe, there was the Justice League International. It is, I don't want to say it's a joke book. It's a little more lighthearted. I've read some of the original volumes, original issues. It's a Justice League team. They handle, like I said, more international stuff. They draw from different parts of the globe to make the team. Booster Gold was in it. Batman was in it. Guy Gardner was in it. All of these characters. Just an interesting smattering of characters from across the DC universe to make kind of an interesting team. Booster Gold is here. He is leading the team. The United Nations chose Booster Gold to lead the team. And Guy Gardner's like, what is this? I don't want to be part of the team this moron is running. And Batman's like, just do it, man. Just do it. And I'm going to watch from the shadows. I'm not going to join the team yet. I don't know. They don't even really get onto a mission yet. It's just sort of the team coming together and the inner workings of the team. I do want to get into this. I think I want to read the original sort of run first and then get into this just to see if it's ruined or if it's a good run from that. But I do like all these characters, so I'm interested to see where it would go from there. And then we have Legion Lost. I had no idea what this was. It's a spinoff of the Legion of Superheroes, which we're going to talk about next. If you don't know the Legion of Superheroes, they're like a future team of a lot of superheroes. It's a big team, and Legion Lost is sort of 7 of those Legionnaires are, as the title says, lost. They travel back in time to the present day. Once again, the superhero or the Legion of Superheroes, they are in the future. And so this Legion Lost, they are in the present day, and they're like, what? 2011 sucks. It's so messed up. And it's like, wait till you see 2020. But I don't know. This just wasn't my thing, which is interesting because I do think it is like a reboot of an Abnett and Lanning run, which, as you know, I'm a huge Abnett and Lanning stan. So maybe I'll have to go read the original and then see what this is about. I just think like the Legion of Superheroes, there's just so many characters that I don't know where to start, who to connect with, which is interesting because if you made a Justice League book with 30 Justice League people that I am familiar with, I would probably think it was awesome. So I think I just need to give it a chance, which brings me to the Legion of Superheroes. Again, it overwhelms me how many people there are, but I am kind of interested in the story they're trying to tell here. The Flashpoint paradox happened and they can't travel backwards through time anymore, which I find interesting. I love when DC does this where they explicitly reference the event that caused the reboot. And so I am interested in that. This sort of disaster that happened because of it has caused some issues here. Normally when I think of the Legion of Superheroes, we have like Saturn Girl, Lightning Lad, Superboy, like, or / Man. He's always a member of it. He's got one of those Legion flight rings. They're not here. It's a lot of characters I don't know or can remember, but a Daxamite shows up. I have no idea the significance of that. Again, this is probably something I should look into a little bit more because I know Legion of Superheroes has its fans. So let me know where I should start if you're an expert on it so I can read it. I know Brian Michael Bendis had a run on it later in the future. Maybe that's worth getting into. I don't know. Let me know. And then we have Men of War. So again, this is like, why did they even do this? So in DC, they had great World War II comic, Sergeant Rock, if you know who that is, beloved World War II comic, DC Comics hero. This is like the modern day setting. I see this and I'm like, did we need this? Did we need this more than New Earth Wally West? Did we need this more than the Justice Society? Instead, we have like Sergeant Rock's great grandson. He's not even a soldier. He's a contractor now. This grandson of Sergeant Rock. There's only 8 issues in this series. Apparently they cross over with the Frankenstein Agents of S.H.A.D.E. So that's interesting. Maybe just read that issue. But this didn't last long. Clearly it just wasn't something that was gonna land. I don't know. And now we have Mr. Terrific, the third smartest man in the world, as he keeps reminding us. If you've seen the new Superman movie, you know who Mr. Terrific is. He's got the T-spheres. He's very smart. He's, I think he's kind of rich. He's almost like an Iron Man type character. I have always really liked Mr. Terrific, so I was interested to see here. Also, we get an appearance from Karen Starr, a.k.a. Power Girl. I don't even know how that makes sense, because I thought Power Girl was like Supergirl from another Earth, but now they're sort of all on the same Earth. I don't even know if Michael knows that she is Power Girl yet, or if the world has seen her, but she's there. Also, he's investigating some corrupt politicians, because that's what DC excels at, making incredible political commentary in their comic books. But it's something I want to get into more, because I like Mr. Terrific. I think he's the only reason I would visit this. Again, I don't know if this series ran a whole lot longer than that, but again, a great character in a lot of team books. I feel like he has yet to like have his shining moment as like in a series of his own. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you can let me know. But yeah. And now we have Nightwing. Nightwing is a character I've read the entirety of the New 52 for. Yeah, this is basically your Nightwing. You know, he's Dick Grayson. He used to be Robin. He's grown up. He's not in Bloodhaven yet. Eventually they do bring in Bloodhaven in the Rebirth era. He's just sort of one of Batman's like people out on the streets helping Batman keep the peace in Gotham. He's not quite as charming, I would say, as like you'd want from Dick Grayson. He's just a little more brooding, which kind of a bummer. I really like the red outfit. Maybe I'm in the minority there. I think it's kind of cool. I also like the blue outfit. I almost wonder if he should switch it up every now and then in the more modern times to do red outfits for specific missions. I don't know. I have always liked Nightwing because he's sort of like Batman, but he's like a little more happy. He's like Batman, but fun. He's also not as jaded as Bruce Wayne. He has a little more hope for people. In this issue, we see Haley's Circus coming back to town. Haley's Circus, for those who don't know, is like where Dick Grayson grew up. His parents and him were like circus performers, and so he's thinking of like joining the circus again, but someone is trying to thwart those plans. It's all tied together. There's like a ninja out there out to ruin the circus, to ruin the city. I like Nightwing. I think this is a pretty strong series altogether. It has ups and downs like most of the New 52, but I I think Dick Grayson and Nightwing really just carries it through. So it's definitely, again, all the Bat Family books here are generally pretty good at checking out. So there you go. Now we have O.M.A.C. This is like nothing. One Machine Army Corps. The guy's name is Kevin Pha. He's become possessed, I guess. It's almost like the Hulk. He's basically the Hulk. Once the O.M.A.C. takes over, he becomes the Hulk. He's got like a glittery blue mohawk, but it's like an AI in his head. I always thought of like, I've read like the Injustice 2 where O.M.A.C. is like created by Bruce Wayne to like monitor everything. But I think this is like, it's all Cadmus's doing. If you know Cadmus, the company within the DC universe that is often associated with cloning and whatever. He's fighting Cadmus. He's fighting some of their weird like telepathic stuff, and there's a girl with a machine gun that comes out of her mouth. I'm not even joking. It's insane. But yeah, this is Dan DiDio, who's like a legendary comic author, but I didn't find this all that compelling. So again, I thought there were more than one O.M.A.C, but in this one there's like one and he's like the Hulk. So I don't know. Maybe don't read it. And then we have Red Hood and the Outlaws. It's like, sorry, Dick Grayson, your teen buddies, they all grew up and started hanging out with your cooler younger brother. Is sort of what it feels like. We got Jason Todd, who, those who don't know, he was Robin. He died and then was like resurrected with some League of Shadows, Lazarus Pit kind of stuff. And then he became the Red Hood. He started terrorizing Gotham, and then Batman sort of like stopped him and cost him self-reflection. And now he's sort of basically the Punisher for the DC universe. He like hates criminals. He'll shoot them. He doesn't care unless you're reading the newer version because they like neutered him basically. Red Hood, he's teamed up with Arsenal, who is aka Speedy, aka Roy Harper. He was Green Arrow's sidekick. Also a former member of the Teen Titans, who I guess is like now a bad boy, and he's like, I'm gonna hang out with Red Hood and stuff. So they like bust out of prison in this. It's pretty interesting. They make off into the desert and they're trying to save Starfire. Starfire, again, another Teen Titan who is just hanging out with Jason Todd. She's here and she is just eye candy, gratuitous comic book kind of stuff. Again, this is the kind of thing where it's like, I feel like when you think of like a comic book fan, you have an image in your mind, and I think this does not help that image, this kind of stuff. Again, this was very controversial at the time. I kind of think it still is. Starfire, I think, is a really good character and even explored really well in this series. But unfortunately, they do relegate her to a lot of standing around in next to nothing. So I don't really care for it. I just think there's a more tasteful way to do this. I've spent too much time on this. Anyways, I do really enjoy this whole run, though. I've read all of it, Red Hood and the Outlaws. I think it's pretty interesting. Scott Lobdell, he writes it. He has some good stuff and he has some bad stuff. I do think this is largely pretty okay. Also, this is like the series that refused to die. After it got canceled, they relaunched it with Red Hood and Red Arrow. Sorry, Red Hood and Arsenal. And then it sort of folded into the New 52. Or the Rebirth era. So, and then we have Red Lanterns. Again, I love a Red Lantern. I love like the expanded Green Lantern universe. In this, we have Atrocitus. They've stolen his cat, and it has that incredible panel where he says, "Where's my cat?" Something like that. For those who don't know, Atrocitus, he's sort of the leader of the Red Lanterns. Red Lanterns are fueled by rage. And so he does some missions with them. There's some other side characters within the Red Lanterns. He's upset because the Owen Guardians, they were responsible for destroying his home. And he feels like I've lost my touch. I've lost my touch of rage. So he goes back to this planet where his family's graves are and whatever. And he like refills himself with rage. And he gets back into, I guess, leading the Corps, being the leader of the Red Lanterns. I believe this series lasts a while. It goes back and forth. I think Guy Gardner ends up joining and becoming a Red Lantern. I think Supergirl also ends up joining and becoming a Red Lantern. And I think that's pretty interesting. So it starts out Atrocitus centered and his cat Dexstar, but it goes in another direction. I think it's definitely interesting to check out. So, and then we have Resurrection Man. Recently I've talked about how I read through the New 52 Resurrection Man. Unfortunately, I don't think it's as good as the original Resurrection Man run by Abnett and Lanning, of course. But I think this is a really solid start. I think the first issue is really interesting. It gets you up to speed with Mitch Shelley and his powers of every time he dies, he's resurrected with a new power. Madame Xanadu is there a little bit. This, again, it lasted probably 12 issues fully, but I don't think they were all bad. I think especially if you've read the original run, you'll find some interesting twists and turns here, a little bit of changes that I don't think are terrible. It's also still written by Abnett and Lanning. So at least there, I kind of feel like better with them like experimenting with their own stuff rather than them giving it to another author who just decided to change everything. So another sort of experiment with the New 52 that didn't last all that long, but it's still worth getting into. And then we have the Savage Hawkman. I don't think this is that great. I read the first volume of this a while ago. It's got Philip Tan doing the art. I love Philip Tan's art. It doesn't look like the Philip Tan art that I like. Maybe it's a different Philip Tan. I don't know. Tony S. Daniel is writing this, and again, I would think it would be better from him. It's just like Carter Hall, who, if you don't know, that's who Hawkman is when he's not Hawkman. He's like an archaeologist. He's investigating some alien stuff, like a symbiote-ish black goop that is taking over. Eventually, he learns about nth metal. What I do kind of like about this Savage Hawkman is he's got like nth metal in his bones or something, and so when he turns into Hawkman, his armor like comes out of his like skin, and he can make whatever weapons he wants. So I do kind of find that really cool. Also, Savage Hawkman is savage in the New 52. They've taken great pains to make him like really super brutal. Though this ends with the black goo sort of touching Hawkman and I believe corrupting him. I can't remember that 100%. I do remember seeing Hawkman in his armor, but he looks like kind of like venomized a little bit. I don't know. Turns out the villain here is Morpheus, who is just like random name generator. The villain, I don't know. It's kind of bland. Again, I like the idea of Hawkman. I feel like they just never execute it well. So I don't know. And then we've got Static Shock. DC had an imprint called the Milestone Comics, the Milestone Universe, and that was sort of more like African-American led universe. So like all their heroes were primarily black heroes. Static Shock is the name of the comic. Static is the name of the hero. Static had a TV show a while ago, so like I'm very familiar that way. Most people know who Static is because of that. I'm glad to see that they've given him a book here. He's running around. Again, this is another sort of Spider-Man analog, young man who is a hero flying around a city and whatnot. Static has the power of like electricity. The book starts out with him chasing Sunspot. He catches him, and a deeper, more sinister plot begins to unfold here. It ends with a cliffhanger. There are some other Milestone heroes that show up throughout this run. This is almost like the portal into the Milestone universe, though it is part of the DC universe proper now. It's just sort of a bummer. I didn't see any of those other heroes really get expounded on going forward. So, but I like Static enough. I don't know a whole ton beyond just the show that I watched as a kid on the WB. But I do think this is something worth getting into. It just sort of depends. I don't know if it gets super politically heavy-handed. That would sort of annoy me. But I don't know. Some might argue that was the point of Milestone Comics in the first place. So I don't know. And then we have Stormwatch. Stormwatch is another Wildstorm property that DC is now using. What I do find interesting is Martian Manhunter shows up here, which he shows up like later in the New 52. It almost feels like a retcon as to like how he shows up later, but I do think it's cool that he's here. The Stormwatch are basically a team of people who watch the Earth when there's like huge earth-shattering galactic problems, like Superman-sized problems, basically. They have like a station like a space station, almost like the Watchtower that orbits Earth, and they watch to see what's going on. I guess something's going on with the moon. It's alive. It kind of reminds me of the center. It would be awesome if they tied that in. I don't think they do. They also sort of ends with the Midnighter showing up. I don't imagine I would probably go back to Stormwatch. I think I'd want to read the old Wildstorm stuff first, because I do think that Stormwatch is pretty good back then. So I'm interested in checking it out. And then maybe coming to the New 52 side of things. And then we have Suicide Squad. It's sort of quick and breezy here. Breezy in a super dark, grim, and gritty kind of way. What's interesting is these heroes, these reformed villains, they already have a lot of history. The issue starts out with like our heroes in the Suicide Squad. They're all being interrogated. A lot of other villains have been interrogated, often to death. But only 6 have remained. 6 have managed to get through the interrogations without dying. And that is sort of who becomes the squad. We've got, Deadshot, Harley Quinn, El Diablo, King Shark, Black Spider, and Voltaic. It's kind of an interesting team. The art style's definitely very interesting. This was before the Suicide Squad movie kicked off, and so when that did and Rebirth launched, they sort of made the movie or the comics more in line with the first Suicide Squad movie. So I'm interested in this just to see what the Suicide Squad was before it was sort of like changed to fit with the movie. I like Harley Quinn enough. I really like Deadshot, King Shark. I mean, it's a great team, so I definitely want to check it out going forward. Now we have Superboy. It's interesting reading these. We have the benefit of hindsight where like I know eventually where Superboy ends up. They sort of brought back the 90s look of Superboy with like the fade and the sunglasses and the leather jacket. But when this came out, it was like, again, 2010s, nanites, realism, science, and stuff like that. They've created Superboy. Obviously, he's a clone of Superman. They're running him through like VR trainings. He's in a facility called Nowhere, Nowhere. What does that stand for? Who cares? I don't know. Meanwhile, Lois Lane, she's like put someone on the inside of Nowhere to find out what's going on. It's mostly just Superboy like in this VR training thing. Eventually he busts out and he joins the Teen Titans. I think Krypto the Super Dog shows up later. I don't know. Again, I don't think this series lasted all that long, unfortunately, because I think Superboy has a really interesting story. But they just sort of went in a direction I don't think worked well. Also, side note, apparently this Superboy and the Superboy with the 90s look, I guess they're different characters. I don't know how that works. Maybe I'll have to read on to find out. Or you can check out the Wikipedia page. I don't know. And then we have Supergirl. Here's the thing. I really like Supergirl, and I don't quite know why. I haven't read a lot of Supergirl books. I just like the idea. Maybe I just like the design. I like the skirt. I like she's like the embodiment of hope that Superman is. She's a little different, though, because she remembers Krypton. She left when she was like an adult. She was sent to Earth to look after Superman as a baby, but got caught up in some time shenanigans and ended up landing on Earth later than Superman did. I think they got rid of the skirt, and it's like the worst design ever. I don't know why she's like, her boots are missing like knees, like her knees are exposed. It's weird that she has like the House of El crest on her crotch. I don't know what that's about. I don't know. Basically, she lands on Earth. No one can understand her because she can't speak English. And eventually Superman shows up and is like, yo, what up? You're from Krypton. I can speak Kryptonese as well. Let's get together. And that's sort of it. It's serviceable. I don't think it's as good as like the pre-New 52 introduction of her. But again, I think they're sort of just trying to speed past that and get to the meat of the story, which apparently wasn't much because, again, they sort of relegated her to being in other books. Like I said, she became a Red Lantern and whatnot. So they were sort of trying to find their footing at this point, I think. The Rebirth, again, like many, Rebirth sort of brings it back to the Supergirl you know and love. So maybe it'd be worth skipping to that rather than this. And now we're at Superman. As I mentioned, we had All-Star Superman right at the very beginning, and now we have the Superman, which is more like modern day. Again, people describe him as weirdly cocky. I don't know. They eventually just straight up killed him and like swept him under the rug and brought in classic pre-New 52 Superman. That's sort of getting ahead of ourselves here. That might be for another video. But in New 52, Clark Kent / Superman is like so angry for some reason. Like I miss the wink and the smiling at the camera or whatever, but he's just like not playing around here. Reference, maybe this is in Action Comics, but it references that the Daily Planet like got destroyed at some point and they've just rebuilt it. For some reason, Clark isn't happy about that. There's like a discount Phoenix Force thing that shows up and Superman saves the day. It sounds simple, but like every page is just so wordy. It's just crammed with just so many words, and it's kind of a slog to get through. It's not really adventurous and fun. It's like cool and serious, and I just don't think it works for Superman, and it did not really land, it seems, for many other readers as well. So I have not really felt the need to go back to this. I just don't know. I just think I missed the mark. And now we have Swamp Thing. This is Scott Snyder. So he was writing the Batman book, and he's writing this. He's pulling double duty here, like many. Swamp Thing is someone I haven't read a whole lot of. I mostly see him in team books. But this seems pretty high quality. Alec Holland is the name of Swamp Thing. Superman comes and pays Alec a visit when like animals are randomly dropping dead around the country. And then they're like coming back to life and they're like a little creepy. I don't know, it feels like very creepy, kind of almost Cthulhu-esque. That's almost how I think of Swamp Thing. He's almost like, at least the Swamp Thing entity, the green that he taps into, is like almost ethereal. It's older than the earth, and we get a little bit of that. It's sort of a horror book in that sense. There's also some history, because it's not like Alec just became Swamp Thing. He's been Swamp Thing for a bit, and that's why Superman visited him. And then Alec sort of sees the Swamp Thing entity, and he's like, "Get ready, this series is about to kick off," you know. And that's sort of where the first issue ends. So it's something I want to get into. I'd love, ideally, to read all the New 52 at some point, but I would die before that happened because I would be so old. But I am interested in Swamp Thing. I know he's had quite the pedigree, quite the fans. I'd be interested to know if you are a fan of Swamp Thing, if you've read this, and if it delivered. Again, I don't really know if it lasted that long. I don't have the figures in front of me, but I think it's worth checking out for me, at least. All right, now we have the Teen Titans. This is probably the worst thing, I don't know, in terms of what people think about the New 52. People do not like where the Teen Titans went with this. It might be one of the biggest misfires they've had. It's a lot of Tim Drake. Tim Drake is sort of putting together the Teen Titans team. Brett Booth is on the art, and again, people don't quite like him. I know he has maybe some artistic problems people don't like about it. I really like Brett Booth. Unfortunately, it wasn't really enough to carry the book for me. Tim Drake, he's Red Robin. In the New 52, he was never Robin. He just went straight to Red Robin. I do like his outfit, though. I like the wings, kind of the Falcon look. His cape is like segmented like wings. Either way, that is beside the point. We've got Superboy, we've got Wonder Girl, not Donna Troy Wonder Girl, but Cassie Sandsmark. Again, weird costume choice. I don't know why you would fight crime in that. We also have Kid Flash, who's Bart Allen, but like not Bart Allen. You know, like I think it's revealed that he's like he's part of like a witness protection thing from the future where they sent him into the past, and the Flash just met him and was like, "You must be my grandson if your name's Bart Allen." Which makes me think they went one direction with Bart Allen and people hated it so much they had to like retcon that it wasn't actually Bart Allen. Impulse, you know, from the comics. But either way, there's also Bunker, Skitter, Solstice, just these new characters that they just threw in. I don't know. The first issue is just Tim Drake sort of bringing them together and introducing them. Apparently, the series goes on and people really don't care for it. I don't know. Teen Titans is such a fun, unique team with so much love from the TV show, from other comics. So to see it in this way, it just, again, missed the mark. Unfortunately, it just didn't land. And then we have Voodoo. This is a Vertigo comic, I believe. I think originally penned by Alan Moore? Or was it Wildstorm? I think it was Wildstorm, penned by Alan Moore. Either way, she is a alien with shape-shifting powers who is a stripper. And this issue is like 80% stripping scenes. I don't get it. But the government shows up and are trying to find out where this alien is. And they go into like a private room with Voodoo, and then she kills him and takes his identity and walks out of there. I don't know. Call me a prude. I don't really go to my comics for this, but maybe it's great. Maybe it's like an interesting tale of an alien on the run, shape-shifting. Again, it didn't last super long, so it's hard for me to believe that there was anything super special, at least in this incarnation. I can't speak for like the previous version. Maybe that was like an incredibly great comic and that's why they spun it off into the New 52, but yeah. And then finally, closing out this marathon, we have Wonder Woman. I think the first issue was fine. I haven't read a ton of Wonder Woman solo books in my life, so I'm interested. I was interested just to go into it from that way. I like New 52 Wonder Woman just generally. Maybe I just like the silver instead of the gold on her outfit. We have a character named Zola. She's getting attacked by centaurs. We find out that Hermes shows up. He gives Zola a key. The key like teleports her to Diana's bedroom. Diana's sleeping stark naked for some reason. Is this an Amazonian thing? Either way, Wonder Woman goes back to Zola's farm, kills all the centaurs. And that sort of starts her on the trail as to finding out why Hermes is involved, who the culprit was that sicked these centaurs on people. I have friends who've read the rest of the Wonder Woman New 52, and they liked it. So, again, this was sort of... The Wonder Woman movie, I think, breathed a lot of interest into Wonder Woman, and this was just before that. When the Rebirth happened, that was sort of when the DC movies were kicking off for like the first time. And so Rebirth is probably when Wonder Woman starts like really hitting her stride in like a modern comic book sense. But the New 52, I think, has some interesting things that show up. I think Donna Troy shows up, relationships with Cassie Sandsmark. And I like sort of the Wonder Woman family. I just like a family, you know. I like a Batman family, a Superman family, a Green Arrow family, an O.M.A.C family. Maybe that's why I didn't like O.M.A.C so much, because he doesn't have a family. I do want to go back to this. As the big three, you know, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, I think it just warrants checking it out. So I think I will probably give that a look later. Or maybe it sucks and you can all let me know. But yeah, that's the end of the first issue of every 52, New 52 issue number 1. Additionally, I think there was a second run of New 52 comics as well, like when they relaunched a few things. I mentioned the Deathstroke relaunch. Maybe for another video perhaps, but this was the initial 52 comics that were launched during the New 52 reboot. I thought it was interesting just to see like what they were doing, where they thought things would start, where they thought things would kick off. So I wanted to read them that way because I'm obviously a huge DC fan. And it's interesting to see that they haven't always been 100% great. I mean, that's not really a surprise to anybody, but I enjoyed the New 52 for what it was when I was reading it while it came out. But I was reading like the good stuff, like Aquaman, Batman, stuff like that, Justice League. So I didn't really get into the nitty gritty with it. So this whole project was an attempt to, do that, to broaden my knowledge in the DC universe side of things. Except most people would argue this was the worst time period to do that in. So I thought it would make an interesting concept here. So I read a lot of these years ago. You could probably tell. This video has been years in the making in a way. It was one of the first projects I wanted to do before I started this channel. I've tried editing this for a while. I've tried different formats. I just figured the best thing to do would just, put on the camera and talk to you. Just real face-to-face, real sincere. It was a fun experiment. I'm glad to finally get this out here. So let me know if you've read any of these. Let me know if you're going to start any of these issues from this shotgun review. So thank you so much, and we'll see you in John's Comic Corner next time. Bye-bye.